If you want to give yourselves a break, if you want to give your minds a rest, understand what it means to give the mind a break. Understand what it means to give the mind a rest. Because what you're doing right now is not achieving that, does not give you that rest, that well-desired and well-deserved break and a rest, because you haven't worked it out yet. You haven't worked out exactly what it is to give your mind a break. That's because you haven't worked out exactly what it means for the mind to be hard at work. It's not seeing something that toils the mind. It's not working through the math. It's not balancing the chemical equations that toils the mind. It's not trying to find a solution to global problems, be that poverty or a pandemic or climate change. It's not thinking about those things that taxes the mind. No, it's not. Because the mind is simply in some kind of activity. If you were to stop doing that, the mind is doing something else. So the mind is always doing something. So if the mind is always doing something, the only choice you have is what that something is, not whether the mind is doing something or not doing anything. You don't have that choice. Even when you're asleep, the mind is still working. What that proves to us, what that should tell us, is then toiling of the mind is not merely using the mind to get things done, to think about things. So it's not reading the newspaper, it's not reading a book, it's not going to work, it's not washing the car, it's not going through the sums, it's not balancing your accounts at the end of the month, it's not trying to plan to, coming up with a business plan, it's not writing up a thesis or a project proposal, or to plan, what you're going to be doing as the president of the country for the next 10 years of your tenure. These are not the things that taxes the mind. These are not the things that tax the mind. No. What taxes the mind is wanting. Because when you want whatever it is you're doing, and you have an expected outcome, you have an expectation of that outcome, and if the mind really desires that, the mind wants nothing but that. Now it has to work through every obstacle, every challenge to get there, but not only that. Now every time the mind is working to that goal, it's in a state of fear. Why fear? Because you never know. You never know what can come and throw you off the track. What can come and stumble you? What can come and hold you in your tracks? What can come and throw you out? What can be the obstacles and the challenges? And you want a plain sailing journey to your destination. Someone else might come and take away what it is that you want. Someone else might come and have it for themselves. Someone might come and steal it. Someone might come and take it rightly because they deserve it, but you feel you deserve it just the same. Think of a promotion at the workplace. Maybe you've made a job application somewhere, and now you've got competition because there'll be other people who'll want that job. And now you're in fear. Think about that feeling when you go for an interview. I'm sure you've experienced that nervousness, right? Sweaty palms, you know what I'm talking about? Butterflies in your stomach. Or when you get on stage, if you're not familiar with public speaking, right? After a while, you get used to it. But, you stand on stage and mic in hand and you see an audience. You got to talk to them, engage them. You know that feeling? Where did that all come from? That is fear, right? We call it stage fright. Why fear? Fear of what? Think about this. As I say, apply this into the lab of your life. Think about the last time you were on stage and you had to give a performance. A song or a dance or narrate a story. So give some kind of performance. A welcome speech. Do you experience that stage fright? Why the stage fright? Is it because you're on a stage? That's why they call it stage fright? Get off the stage and now try talking and see if that goes away? No, clearly not. There's an audience and now you have to present. What's working in your mind? What if I get this wrong? Why does that bother you? What if they don't like my performance? Wait, why does that bother you? What if it turns out to be a complete flop and I forget the lines? Hang on, why does that bother you? Why does that bother you? What if I get really nervous and I faint? All right, why does it bother you? What if I don't get the job? Why does that bother you? What if she says no? Again, why does that bother you? It bothers you because in each of those situations, there's something you want, isn't there? You want her to say yes. You want them to give you the job. You want the audience to like your performance. You want them to give you a standing ovation. You want to win the first prize. You want that cup. You want the medal. You want the certificate. You want to get through the audition. You want to pass to the next round. You want to hit the home run. No? Take away all those wantings. If you could truly say, you know what, Swaminathan, got that. You know what, I don't care whether she says yes or she says no. I'm just going to go and ask her. That is, if you've ever said that, you're just lying through your teeth. No? I'll prove it to you. Why are you asking her then? If it matters not what she has to say, why ask? Because whether she says yes or she says no, it makes absolutely no difference to you. Why ask then? You can simply assume, right? If she said yes, you do exactly what you would if she'd said no. In which case, why do you ask? You only ask a question because you want the answer. So you want the answer, meaning there's an answer that you want. There's an answer that you prefer. You have a preference. You have a liking. You have something you want. Take away wanting from each of those situations. Getting up on stage, going for that interview, asking someone out, right? Making that offer. Say you want to buy a house and you think so many times before you make an offer. Why? Because you want to make a good impression, right? What if the offer is too low? Then they might be disappointed with your offer and they might think you're not taking them seriously enough and they might reject it and not even be interested in taking another offer. Or maybe your offer might come too low. But what if you make an offer that is too high? You might not be able to back out. You might not be able to negotiate a better deal. Again, it's fear. Why fear though? Fear is always based in wanting. So that's fear. Then there's another part. There's another reason why the mind can never rest. And that is loss or grief. The grief that comes with loss. Think about times when you've been in a terrible mood, really sad and disappointed. Did you feel that you were giving yourself a rest? Was the mind at rest? I mean, that goes without saying. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? Times of grief are, these are not moments that you want back in your life. Those are the moments that you wish you never happened and you wish you'd never need to remember again. Think about a very grieving moment in your life, something that brought you a terrible amount of grief. Even the thought of it, just juggling your memory, it's not a happy feeling. You don't like it, you don't want it, and just thinking about it stresses you out again. It's painful. And again you feel, I was doing so well. I was doing just fine. I was having a really happy time, a really good time. And then he had to come and ask me about my late mother, or my grandmother, or my husband who left me, or my son who I lost 2 years ago. And then from that point forward, I was just not myself anymore. It was a real downer from that point on. You might have heard yourself saying, or at least thinking inwardly. That was a time when you lost your cool. Again, why was that a problem? What is grief based in? I asked you this last week. Why are you not grieving the loss of so many hundreds of thousands of millions of people who die every year around the globe? But if something were to happen to one of your loved ones, you'll talk about that for years to come. I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, but all I'm saying is, it's wanting that brings grief. So it's wanting that brings fear. And it's wanting that brings grief. When fear and grief haunt the mind, when they hijack the mind is exhausted. The mind is toiled. The mind is worked hard. The mind loses its cool. It is no longer relaxed. It is no longer free. It goes into tension mode. It's stressed out. You get a mental strain. And that's when you feel, I need to take a break. I'm exhausted. But without you knowing the science behind this, without you knowing that this is wanting that's causing all of this, you'll think to yourself that it's the activity that's stressing you out. And it's not. So it's not working through the math. It's not doing the sums. It's not coming up with problems to tackle global problems or problems at the workplace or at home that causes you to stress out. So too much work can obviously tire you out physically, but work does not tire you out mentally. Because if you didn't do that work, you'd be doing something else. You've never not worked mentally. The mind has always worked. Whether it's eating or sleeping or drinking or going places or watching the TV, listening to some music, talking to a friend, playing chess, playing cricket, golfing, swimming, gliding, you name it. Whatever you do, the mind is at work. Only the difference is there are some things you like doing, other things you don't like doing. Things you like doing, other things you want to do. Things you don't like doing, other things you don't want to do. Whenever the mind has to do something it doesn't want to do, that's when the mind gets stressed out. So when you're at the workplace and you go, oh gosh, I'm so stressed. Or it's at uni. Maybe you've got your final year exams coming up and you go, I'm so stressed. It's just so much work. Not true. Not true. Or say you're a minister, either at the church or you're a minister of the country. And you go, gosh, all this work that I have to get through, so much to do. And it's stressing me out. Not true. It's not the work that stresses you out. It's fear and grief that stresses you out. Fear, because you're fearful that you might not be able to get what you want. Grief, it's when you've lost what you wanted. And you feel that you've lost all hope. It's not possible to get it back again. Doesn't stop you trying again, but you know that time I lost it. And then again the mind is stressed, strained, tensed. So you see, how is it then that Buddhist philosophy teaches one to do a trillion things, a gazillion things, and still be cool-headed? I'm trying to show you how you can do 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, 100 times what you're doing right now, folks. And you can be as cool as a cucumber. Because it's not the work that stresses you out. It's not the quantity or the amount or the variety of the work that stresses you out. You could be doing so much more than what you're doing right now, if only you are able to rid the mind of wanting. You could do so much more for your family. You could do so much more at the workplace and get through all those promotions in as many years as it has taken you to get to where you are today. Or even in half the time, in a third of the time. Whatever promotions you've had up until now at your workplace, and it's taken you X amount of time, in a third of the time, in a quarter of the time, you could climb up as many number of promotions. If you start to figure out and start to work through the real problem here, it's not the quantity of the work. It's not your scope. It's not the number of lives that you have to be responsible for. It's not the amount of the work. It's not the workload that stresses you out. Let's get this straight right, folks. It's such a shame that we human beings who have so much capacity to do so much good to the world and everyone who lives in it, and every life, and transform those lives in very meaningful and positive ways. It's such a shame that we've missed the point when it comes to what is it that stresses us out. It's not the hard work. It's not the labor. It's not the quantity. It's not the amount. It's just one thing. And that is when you want something. And you want it. When you want something bad, you're always fearful that you might not be able to get it. That stresses you out. No end. When you want something, and in the chance that you lose it, the event that you lose it, again that stresses you out. It could even break your heart. Some people can go crazy. And even end up in the mental asylum. All this because of one thing. Because people haven't figured out that it's wanting that brings suffering. That is why 2.5 millennia ago, the great master, he made this fantastic discovery. And he said, the first noble truth of suffering is wanting.